Welcome to the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast with your host, Jody Betty.
Hi, and welcome to the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast. Today, our guest is my dear friend, Donald Cribbs. Don, how are you, my friend? It's been such a long time since we talked.
I'm doing great, Jody. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It's so good to have you back on. I know we taped many years ago, but it was many years ago, so I figure it's time to do a refresher. And I know that you've got your book out now, so tell us about you, tell us about your book, tell us about whatever you want to talk about, my friend.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And
Of course.
wasn't that last time back when we were in COVID?
I think it might have been just right before COVID or the year of COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a weird time.
Yeah.
A lot
Yes,
has
to say the
happened
least,
since
right?
then.
Right? Oh
um,
my gosh.
so, I had finished my master's degree, got my license, and I've been a licensed professional counselor doing clinical mental health work. Um,
Awesome.
and I mean, I've been doing work since I was 6 years old, so now I get paid for it. Woo!
Right, right. That's awesome. I'm proud of you, man.
Thanks. Yeah, like 45 years of walking this journey of healing and recovery, and all the craziness the world did to us. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I get to
Well,
have the privilege of helping others on the journey too when they're coming out of their stuff. So
right. Yeah, it's always nice to have someone who will meet you where you are at your journey and then kind of not pull you through it, but like walk beside you while you go through it, you know?
mhm. Yeah, and when that person has walked that themselves and might have some training in, say, I don't know, trauma informed care, perhaps they can provide that individual the help that they need. So,
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of, you know, I know you need the letters behind your name to get a job.
yeah,
However, the people that I have connected with as therapists are always the ones who've had their own trauma because they truly understand trauma
right.
from both perspectives. They have the background and the knowledge and the experience, right?
hmm And for your listeners, if they're on their own journey, or if they're thinking about starting a journey, or if they're, had some bad experiences so far and don't want to try again, I would encourage them to take the risk, but really do the homework and the research. And it's just as important for the individual seeking counseling to um, fire the counselor who isn't clicking for them and go
Yes.
get the one that they do connect with, they resonate with, and they trust and feel like, I think I can work with this person, you know.
Yeah, and as you know, as a trauma survivor, it's not always easy to, trust and connect or find that connection where you feel safe to like truly open up, not just surface level open up, but like open up like someone cut an onion instead of peeling the layers back.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor for it too. I mean, it really is going around the mountain and peeling every layer. And you know it's not an accident that onions make us cry. So sometimes the closer you get to the center of that onion, it's, you're really tearing up. But
Yeah,
it's all that
absolutely.
deep stuff, shaking loose and coming up and shaking free. And it's so important.
It is, and doing the work, like it's one thing to go to counseling once a week and learn a new technique, but the mind is, it learns by repetition. It's why we can
Mhm.
remember songs from like 1980, right? Because we sang them 400,000 times. the brain is the same thing. We need to be able to, repeat our new skill, our new coping behavior over and over and over and over until it replaces the old one.
Right. Yeah. And when I work with an individual and they're really stuck and we kind of keep circling around the drain of it, I always think, okay, there's still stuff here. We haven't got all of it. But I try to present it from the idea of, one of the things that I use to have fun and enjoy myself and escape were video games. So I always use the metaphor that it's like a live action video game, and they get sophisticated nowadays, particularly on the consoles. But
Mm-hmm.
um, there's like a main quest, and then sometimes there's side quests. And I'll tell them, if you hit a wall and you're not getting past it, or we just keep circling around, around, there's stuff there, and those are the missing artifacts that you need in order to go on to the next thing. So let's just do it. We'll just do the
Yeah.
side quest. We'll
Yeah.
get you the thing you need, and then we'll move on to the next stuff.
Yeah. And that's a great approach too, because it also, the side quests, aside from being a side quest, are also smaller, more manageable tasks, which gives you,
Hmm.
like the confidence to be able to take on a bigger task.
Right. Maybe you need some courage or some self confidence, because
Yeah.
how many of us were silenced by our trauma and we didn't uh, even know how to speak up or have voice or believe that we deserve to have agency and ownership of our life.
Yeah,
So,
something, we've both lived with for, since a ridiculously young age. And
mhm,
it, for me, well, my story, it affected my life for, it still does in a way, but the work that I've done, I got burned really bad by my last therapist, like really bad. She was literally
mhm,
puts the psycho in psychotherapist. She's up for like losing her license now because she's got so many complaints and all this other horrible stuff she does. She's very manipulative, and she even did a session where I had to be her counselor so she could vent to me. Like it was like a reverse session. She's like, "Oh, it'll be fun." I was like, "What? What's happening? Why am I paying you to
mhm.
listen I gotta listen to you now? This is ridiculous."
Yeah, that
But
sounds like a huge red flag.
oh,
And
it was huge, huge. So many things, and then obviously we split ways, and now that had to file a report and all this stuff. So they're working on it because there's so many complaints about the same thing. So
yeah,
it's just like a repetitive behavior that she doesn't know how to change or is not willing to change, one of the two. So I
mhm,
decided, okay, well, you know what? I felt stuck. I felt like, oh, maybe this is like all I can heal. Maybe like I'm at the end of it and I don't know what else to do. And then someone suggested I get an inner child workbook. I'm really good with workbooks because they give I'm a writer, obviously, and they give writing prompts so then I can just like blah, spew or whatever else. It was like the best workbook ever. Like it got so many years of weight off my shoulder with all these
mhm,
like different perpetrators, with my father, with all the stuff, because it was encouraging me to just like write out everything, like all the things you've always wanted to say that you'll never be able to accept, the apology that you're never going to get, just get it all out. If it's angry or whatever, it doesn't matter. And then when you're done, don't read it back, because basically it's just a massive trauma dump. And when I did the
mhm.
one for my dad, it was like 18 pages, dude. Let me tell you, I was like, after I put the pen down, I was like, holy crap, I feel so much better. Like it was just
Yeah,
like one weight off my shoulder, like instantly.
mhm,
So for me, that's been a huge help in getting me out of that stuck point.
mhm. Yeah. I love inner child work. I think it's really important, um, because that poor child inside of us, the part of us who went through the trauma, didn't have anyone protecting them, and we are now on the other side of it. We're fully grown, we're adult, we had our frontal lobe. Women get theirs at 25, men take until they're 30. Men are always slow. We're slow about everything. But you can then step in and say, hey, I am you. So like it would be my honor to be your mentor and to have your back. And when you feel like you're going to flip your lid and freak out, don't worry. I've got it. I'll take it. You just
Yeah,
relax and then we'll talk about it. And um, that can be so healing, that process.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. It's just to be able to create a safe space for someone, for me, that's a gift because there's a lot of people who just don't have that ability, whether they're therapists or just people in general.
mhm,
So, like when I started my Twitter space, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to record this because this is people's private information. If I want them to share about trauma, it doesn't need to be on all of X for everybody to share all the time. I want
mhm,
them to be comfortable in the small little community that's being created, learn to have each other's backs, and then
mhm.
also feel comfortable enough to share because they know it's staying within that community.
Right. Yeah. That does make it a safe space.
Right.
Um,
And to get people to open up sometimes, like I know for me, like I used to, I don't know if I would do it with a therapist anymore. I'm pretty blunt now, but I used to like almost like test them, like, with what I'd say or the way I'd say it, or like test them with little things to see if they're gonna, like what their reaction's gonna be like, or if they're gonna approach me in like a harsh manner, or if it's gonna be like a gentle manner, which I would prefer kind of thing. It was like
mhm.
you know, a 3-year-old testing and the parent saying, "Don't touch that, it's hot," and the hand keep running for it. It's hot, it's hot, it's hot until he gets burned his hand.
Yeah. I work at a faith-based practice because
Oh,
I
nice.
believe we should be able to use all the dimensions of who we are. Now, that said, I'm not there to ram anything down anyone's throat. We always meet the client where they're at, and we always ask permission. I look for consent. Even if you put
Yes.
it on your intake, I'm going to say, "Are you sure? Are you okay? I'm about to share a faith-based resource. Is that okay?" Because I
Right.
want the person to want to have that information if they do, and if they don't, that's perfectly fine. But trauma affects all the dimensions of who we are, including our faith. So why wouldn't we want to tend to that section of ourselves? Um, but I do have people coming in testing the boundaries of what they think is appropriate, and swear words might fly out. When we get into our trauma, sometimes some swear words come out, and I say, "Oh, don't worry. Use whatever language you need here because this space is for you." And
Right.
it doesn't bother me. you
Well,
know
see, that sounds like a gentle, soft approach, and meeting someone where they're at is so important. Like, and I think it also, having the skill and knowledge plus the experience, you truly can meet them where they are and work with them from there. Whereas coming from a like psychiatry approach or something where you're always, on a pedestal trying to, heal someone who you're looking down on at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, I just say judgment is above my pay grade. That's a God thing. I can't do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have no judge's robes. I don't have a white
Yeah.
wig, no
Right.
gavel.
Right. Yeah,
So I
exactly.
just butt out. It's not my
How
place.
how long you been doing that now?
5 years.
Awesome.
And actually, I just passed a milestone where I can do supervision for other counselors who are getting their license.
Oh, cool. That's fun.
Yeah, so I get to
Awesome.
train
Congratulations.
other counselors. Yeah, I love it. It's so fun. So,
Yeah, right. And coming from you too, because I know you, like I think you'd be a really good and patient teacher, and also your mindset is, in a good spot in many areas. So I think you can pass that down to them. Those aspects of you
Mhm.
can be passed down. So I think, yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
I love that it's like multiplying, it has that ripple effect. So what,
Yes.
what inner child book and workbook did you find? Do you remember?
Um, Give me 1 second. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh, it's out. Uh, we just moved long ago, so not everything is where it should be yet. I will get back to you on that.
Okay. I'm
Um,
curious. This is the one that I have. Um,
oh, The Child Within. No, I haven't seen that one.
and there is a workbook that goes with this. So,
Oh, cool.
so this is Charles Whitfield. It's a bit of an older um, resource, but um, I think it's organized well and it lets you get into the inner child work. And then the other one that I have found is specific to one of the niche areas that I work with is mostly men addicted to pornography.
Okay.
So I work with those men coming out of that addiction,
Right.
and we one of the pieces is that we do inner child work. And so there's a gentleman with a lot more letters after their name than me, specializations in that, and Dr. Eddie Caparucci, and
Okay.
he has a book called Going Deeper. It's a little pricey, but it basically presents the idea that for those of us with trauma, we often find ourselves in an addiction um, because of a lack of inner child work, um, because of some deep wounding there. And so, what he does is he presents 9 chapters in the book. It's called Going Deeper, and there's a book and a workbook. Um, 9 chapters that profile the inner child. And so, what you do is you read through the 9 different profiles and you figure out which of these combined together is the profile of my inner child.
Okay.
And then from that, you can then start doing some empathy work because most men who have pornography addiction lack empathy.
Right.
And then he has a second book that goes on to um, why men struggle, and it's for men who are married and have that addiction and maybe have also
Okay.
trauma,
Right.
to grow that empathy and to do some further healing. But
It's awesome. When we're done, can you send me the names just on DM because I probably
sure.
won't remember. But yeah, I'd love to take a look at that one sounds really interesting because like I think everyone's gonna have a little bit of, you know, not everyone, but most people are gonna have a little bit of each when you're reading through that book. So, as
Mhm.
you have 9 different profiles, you're gonna be like, oh, wait a second, I have a little bit of one and a little bit of two. I
Yeah.
wonder how many people actually just identify with one profile. So that's really interesting to me. And I love workbooks, so that sounds
Mhm.
really good.
Yeah. So it's a great resource. I just wish it wasn't inside of that particular addiction. So
Right,
it's not
right,
as accessible for people because they don't know about it.
right.
They
Yeah,
wouldn't have reason to look unless they were struggling with that addiction.
right.
Um,
That must
well,
be it's kind of like one I don't when I'm thinking of addictions, it's probably like it's one I don't commonly think of, honestly. Like when, if you're
mhm.
talking about addictions, I'm always like, oh, gambling and drugs or alcohol or whatever else
Yeah.
but yeah, that's an interesting one.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, as you know, in my background, when I first finished my master's degree and I hadn't gotten my license, my LPC licensure yet, I started working in drug and alcohol counseling for folks coming off
Mm-hmm.
of heroin addiction. So I saw all the drugs. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like big bowlfuls that they were just swallowing back. And I'm like, how are you alive?
Yeah. Yeah. There's some people I question now that I still wonder how the hell are you still alive? But
Right.
I don't know. That's crazy.
And then they started tracking, oh yeah, I've been Narcan 7 times. Like,
Oh my God.
do you hear yourself?
Yeah. This is like a Narcan passport. I won. I won. Got all my
Woo!
stamps first.
I got my 7th trophy. Woo!
Oh my God.
No,
So
stop
hard on
doing
the
that.
body.
Yes, it really tears the body apart. And then they're chasing the, what is it, the carfentanil, like not just the fentanyl. So there's heroin, and then fentanyl is 1,000 times more um, than heroin, and then carfentanil is 1,000 times more than fentanyl,
Oh my God.
and it's a elephant tranquilizer.
Oh my God.
And elephants are like 8, 9,000 pounds, so
Jesus.
like,
Just one little bit, mix
yeah,
with the wrong thing and that's it.
you dead, yeah.
Yeah. It's so sad. It's so
Hmm.
sad that, we have so many people that are addicted because of, unresolved trauma. But
Right.
so like I'd say 90% of people who are addicted have like serious trauma issues and,
Hmm.
they don't want to cope. They can't cope. They don't even have the resources sometimes. Like, you know, for
Right.
me, I had to stop counseling so many times because, like, I can't afford that kind of money. Are you kidding me? Like, if up here it's probably like 150 an hour to 200 an hour, unless you can get someone who's like nice and has a sliding scale.
Hmm.
But like on disability or anything, like unless you make a lot of money, that's, a lot of money per month,
Hmm.
right? And it's just
So
it
expensive.
Yeah, and it makes it unaccessible for so many people. And I
Hmm.
think, I know, they worked hard for all of the 100 letters behind their names, and they, obviously are not going to give away your information for free, but at some point in time, it's just like, oh my God, how many years do you need to charge $200 an hour for to make your money back, and
Hmm.
continue your lifestyle,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I don't even make that. I'm not anywhere near that. An hour. I'm like down here.
Well, that's good because you know what? More people can access that. More people can get therapy because of people like you or, who have all that knowledge and resources, but, aren't taking people's meals off their tables for them to be able to heal.
Yeah. And I work for a nonprofit, so they actually fundraise and try to help everyone regardless of ability to pay. So
Oh,
we
that's
have
so cool.
we have money for that to be designated, but we're
Right.
trying to make it, be good stewards and stretch it as far as we can to help as many people as we can.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. I wish there was so many more companies like that, who are just like willing to help because people need help. They want to help. It's not about, getting paid $200. It's more like I really want to help this person. I see a light in them that's, like been darkened for years and,
Hmm.
they need to know people that they're not alone and in their like dark moments, there's someone that's got to be there for them.
Yeah, it's so important. We all need that. So, yeah, I love the work that I'm doing, trying to get through my student loans
Oh, yeah.
for undergrad and grad school. And then they dumped a ton of interest on top of that.
Oh my God,
So
it's the worst.
it's the price of a house now. Like the total, it's terrifying. And we just got into this new uh, student loan program. Um, Biden and Harris were working on it, president and vice president, and um, the a particular group filed a suit against it and don't want them to do that. And so
Of
now
course
it
not.
got thrown back, and I just got notified. We were all in forbearance while the court case was going on, waiting to find out. And they just notified me, oh, your loan is going out of forbearance and it will start coming due again in February of 2025.
Oh my God.
Just guess. Wild speculation and guess. Now, it's the price of a house. Like, it's a few $100,000 total, undergrad and grad.
Jesus.
And I would say 2/3 of that is interest.
Yeah, yep, that's what it's like up here too.
Guess how much my monthly payment is
Oh
in
my God, it's
February.
gotta be at least 5 grand, at least.
I wish. I fell on the floor and could not believe that that was a monthly payment. They just quoted me and said, oh, your monthly payment for February is $57,500. And I
What?
said, are you kidding me? Do you think I have $57,500 to pay a student loan payment on, plus my mortgage, plus, all these other
Oh
things?
my God. I've never heard that. I've never heard that's just
It's insanity.
wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
madness.
just hoping that we get the right people in the White House
Yes, in power.
to go get that back in place and go back to,
Yeah,
because when it was originally approved, it was $0 a month for the next 40 something years until it wipes
right.
out all by itself. Now, I'm not waiting for that, because who knows who will get in the office the next time. I'm not trusting that. So I've been doing 6 years of nonprofit work. We have a thing where if you hit 10 years of giving back to the community, you serve in a nonprofit, you make less money, but you're serving the community, then they cancel out and forgive all your loans.
Oh wow.
So
That's
I'm all
good.
about that. Like, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll do my
Yeah.
time, and then I can go
Like
wherever I want
nobody
after that.
I've ever heard of, nobody I've ever met, unless they're like a celebrity millionaire, has an extra 50, what did you say, $57,000 a month.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Now, it was only 5 more payments, but good grief.
Well, though, how come those payments can't be split over the next 20 years? Like, that is
Right.
ridiculous to call someone and say, oh, I need 50 grand. Like, so do I. Let me know when you have it. Bye.
Right. It's
Wow.
insanity. So I'm like, okay, well, hopefully that gets sorted out, because
Yeah.
otherwise,
I can't speak for all Canadians, but man, I hear you.
oh, regarding the election.
Yeah, I think a good portion of Canadians are where you're at, so
Yeah.
we're all keeping our fingers and toes crossed.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I know the whole world's watching, but whew, and I'm not trying to get all political on your channel. I don't want to stir up the hornet's nest or anything.
No, I know. It's a crazy world right now. That's all I can say. It's a crazy world.
Yeah.
Your book. Tell me about your book.
Sure. So part of my journey is, we did a bunch of stuff, before I ended up becoming a counselor. And there was a season where we transitioned out of a job and I was looking for new employment. And it was before I went back to school to get the master's degree, which ended up being pretty therapeutic, actually, because in order to become a counselor, you actually are required to go through all your junk, which I
Yeah,
think is appropriate,
yeah.
you can't help anyone heal any further than you have gone yourself. So I had to basically rip my rib cage open, yank my heart out, crush it every month or every week. And they were like, okay, and now write a 20-page paper about that with citations. Slap that heart back in, close the rib cage. Okay, take a breath. All right, next one. Do the next one.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was just course after course digging through all the junk. Okay. So in that season, I also, in my spare time, I decided I was going to write my story. And I have struggled and struggled with how to even write the story. I could not figure out the inroad. I couldn't figure out the hook. Like, who's going to want to read this? It's depressing. Nobody wants to read a trauma story. But little side note, I have been cultivating a list of survivor stories, and I actually post them on my social. So pinned on my Twitter, and I refuse to call it that other.
I know.
um, I have the list right at the top. It's a whole thread of tweets.
Okay.
And I break it down 15 books at a time. And I have a list of 300 survivor books that are published.
Wow.
So all different walks of life,
What a great
perspectives,
resource.
identities, but goodness, I didn't have these resources when I was going through it. When I was 6 years old, this stuff happened to me, and my family had no idea what to do. They didn't know how to help. And so I was on my own from 6 years old on. And it was a hard, lonely road.
Yep.
I would have loved to go to the library and get books that I found examples of myself in. I would have loved to have read 300 other survivor stories and begin to see and believe that, oh, others have gone through this too. I'm not alone.
Yep.
And we all have this way out, and we can help each other. So I'm all about that. Okay, so it hit me, this idea. It just came to my mind, and suddenly the entire book fell into my brain. And I was like, oh my
Love
gosh,
it.
I know how to do it.
Right.
And so it starts with my characters having insomnia, which is a common symptom of. Now, the character's representing me. And he's in high school, and he's having nightmares. And so he's not getting sleep at night. So he's exhausted, and he's in a study hall, and he falls asleep, and he has a nightmare in front of the entire class. And there's a substitute. So, like, somebody pulls their phone out and records me freaking out in my desk, like scratching the desk across the floor, crying out, screaming out. And they come over, and the teacher comes over and wakes me and says, you might want to go talk to a counselor about that. And I'm like, what? And just come to. Well, then I leave the class and I go down the hallway, and playing on everyone's phone all the way down the hall is everyone watching the recording of my nightmare.
Oh my God.
They upload it to YouTube and bully me with it. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is the hook that gets everyone into the story.
Right.
Like, now what? Now what
Yeah.
do you do?
Yeah.
How do you live that down? And his answer is he runs away. And then it's like, okay, now what? Like, it just keeps
Yeah.
going. And
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out a way to tell a compelling story that you were just cliffhangering every end of the chapter, couldn't wait to turn the page and find out what happens next. But it's unpacking this story of a trauma survivor and not even knowing who the abuser is. And the nightmares are about somebody trying to chase and kill the main character
Okay.
in the form of a demon. So it's a little dark. But further into the book, the nightmares start changing, and there's all different ones. There's like spiders that wrap him up in a web and then suck the blood out of him. There's huge deluge of water, and he goes under and he's drowning. He's burned at the stake. There's a demon chasing him. The floor turns to quicksand. Like, there's all these different ways that he's pulled down into the darkness. And that was what it was like for a good 10 years afterwards. I lived that. Like, that's not made up.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like it, and I did embellish it, but it's like 95% my story.
Right.
The thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to write a memoir, because
Right. Okay.
there are rules in memoir. You have to write everything and the truth, and you can't make stuff up. Or
Okay.
you get to the stuff that's uncomfortable, you have to talk about it. You can't avoid it.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that.
And I have, I mean, I guess you can choose what to put in and what not to put in for your memoir, but it's like the rules are felt too confining to me. So I thought this route was a better way, because I could talk about trauma and about my story and get as close to it as possible, but like have this little bit of distance between it.
Right. I have the character barrier.
And that helped me go there and face those really hard parts, because I put all the stuff in, like all the encounters and all the assaults and everything. But this helped. And I didn't have to put in the neglect and the abandonment and the betrayal coming from my family. That was there, and just super depressing. Like, who would want to read that? Nobody. So I didn't want to live it. So
Right.
I'll
Right.
just
I
tell you,
hear
right?
you on that one. I know.
Right?
So when's this chapter over?
Right. Can we just get past this? But so there's a lot in it, but also I wanted to be representative of the clients I work with and some of their stories, and some of, like, I've gone to men's retreats, and I mean, I sobbed my guts out listening to some of their stories, and
Yeah.
it totally changed my life. And I feel like, well, mine wasn't even all that. Like, we get to comparing, and it's so stupid. We shouldn't do that. I
In
always tell
human
my
nature, it's
clients,
awful.
the only appropriate comparison is yourself to yourself. And you're looking at, here's where I was and here's where I am, and look at how
Exactly.
far I have come. Okay. A good comparison, a fair comparison. Any comparison to anybody else, just stop it. No.
It's like this. Yeah, absolutely. Because like if five people are in a car, the same car in a car accident, they're all going to have a different perspective of their trauma and how they deal with their trauma and how that accident affected them, even though it was all together. It was one thing, right?
Mhm. So the inroad to this story was, everyone in the book is running. Everyone is running away. The main character is running away. The brother is running away. The mom is running away. Everybody's running away. And as the story unfolds, you're trying to figure out which of like 5 different people the person in the nightmares is representing.
Right.
And as that's happening in his real life, he's interacting and intersecting with facing that person in real life. And then the reader's like terrified, because like, is it him? Is it
Yeah,
them?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so it was a really interesting puzzle to unravel and unpack. And just him like deciding, yep, I'm going to run away. And then doing that. And then, okay, how's he going to deal with food and a place to sleep? And what is he going to do?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What's the next adventure?
right. So it ends up being 3 different sections, part 1, 2, and 3. And he's at 3 different schools. So he's at the school he was at the beginning of the book, and about to the end of that section is when he runs away. And then he's a runaway, but he's going to a second school and trying to sneak around and make that work. And he gets caught. And then consequences happen.
Of course, right?
And then that leads, I'm being very vague here, but it leads to him going to the third school. I'll just say, like, passed around the family, because
Yeah,
isn't that what
yeah,
happens to trauma survivors?
yeah, yeah,
I'm done with you. I can't deal with you anymore. I'm going to send you off to so and so. They'll take care of you. You
yeah,
know, and they wash their hands of you.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
Uh, as you know, I was adopted, and my parents took in another foster child, and I have three memories of her. And I thought she only stayed with us like a few weeks, maybe a few months. And after my mom passed, I found school records. She was there for a year and a half.
wow.
And I remember the day that they dropped her off back at, I don't know, Children's Aid.
Mm.
And literally at that moment, I think I was like 6 or 7. I was like, oh my God, I can be returned. That's all I could think for like, so
Oh,
for me, aside from like dealing with the domestic abuse at home, I was also hiding all these like, extra events of sexual abuse that were going on left, right, and center. And I felt like, oh my God, if I tell anybody, aside from the threats that you always get, but if I tell anybody, like, they're not going to want to deal with me, and then they're just going to
mm,
ship me off again. I was just like, oh my God. And that's after, like, I was in 5 foster homes for 18 months. So it was just like,
mm,
okay, why is everyone passing me around? What the hell is fundamentally wrong with me? And I grew up like that, thinking there is something like seriously wrong with me that so many people. And then when I actually ended up speaking to my worker as a child when she was older, she was still working there when I was around 17, 18. And because everyone was deceased, she could tell me, like, not names, but she could tell me like all the crap that happened to me. And then I was just like, holy crap, like, why was this not made
mm.
available to my adoptive parents? Like, why didn't you tell them any of this, right? They just thought I was like going off about having a bath for like no reason, and I was being bratty. And meanwhile, it's because I was drowned when I was a year. Like, this is
Wow.
just information that kind of should be passed on to the new
Uh-huh.
parents, right?
Yeah, to not re-traumatize you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I lived with that for years, and then all of a sudden it
Oh.
was just like, wait a second, you know what? Like, half of this crap that I'm carrying is not my weight to carry. It's not mine, and all the all the shame that goes with it and everything else. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm done with shame. Bye bye shame. I didn't do anything wrong.
Mhm.
Right. And that's when I started writing and talking. And now, like, I don't have the letters behind my name. So, but I'm, like, a wealth of all this, like, information from being over therapied. So I'm just like, well, I might as well share it with whoever needs help.
Mhm. Yeah. It's we all have a calling. We all have a purpose, and we need to know who we are, and then we need to know what we're here to do,
Yeah.
and then go do that.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
wife and I were house parents at Milton Hershey School, which is a school for underprivileged children, children who are, parents are in jail or dead or,
Okay. Okay.
whatever. Sometimes aunts or grandparents. There always has to be a family member for them to get into
Okay.
the school, but um, it's what happened with the Hershey fortune after they made the chocolate and made their fortune. They couldn't have children, so they left a legacy, their whole inheritance into a trust to fund a school for underprivileged children.
What? I didn't know. That's awesome.
Yeah, so we worked there for 7 years. We were house parenting middle school girls for that time, and then we ended up getting fired because um, they had a rule that you couldn't have a certain number of personal children and do this job. And we
Oh.
were hired before that rule was instated. So we were grandfathered to be allowed an extra one. So they capped everyone at 2 children, can't have more than 2 personal children, and we were allowed a third. and we had our third, and then we were preventing number 4, and he came along anyway.
Surprise!
And so we essentially violated the child policy, and we had to leave. Now, they paid us a severance package and moved us, and we could get unemployment for a year. And this was that transition period when I wrote my survivor story, because it only took 3 months to write the first draft. It just came
Oh,
pouring out of me.
yeah.
And so we did that. And then recently, so I haven't talked to you about this, but a few years ago, my wife and I joined a fostering agency, and we got ourselves set up to become foster parents.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And we have 4 boys of our own, but my youngest is 15. My second youngest has turned 17 today.
Oh, happy birthday to him.
So that one is Tyler. And our oldest turns 23 on the 26th.
Wow.
And that one
Okay.
is our Tim.
Awesome.
So we took in a baby girl,
Aw.
and we only had her for 4 months, and that
Okay.
was the hard part,
Yes.
because there's fluctuation with fostering. Now, this was our first placement. We've never done this before,
Right.
and although in my real trauma history, some of the stuff that I didn't want to put in my book, I was thrown in a foster home for 2 weeks. My mom had a breakdown and couldn't deal and threw us all in foster and just took a break and then got herself together and then came and got us. But it was, there was some stuff going on. But
yeah.
So I knew that I had this memory of that. And my wife also has her own story of there were families that stepped in and helped her. Not exactly a fostering situation, but kind of a community helping situation.
Right.
Not my story to tell, so
right. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just stop right there. But we walked into it with that perspective. And in the trainings, because there's so many trainings you have to have just to get set up to be open, they have to inspect your home, you have to pass all these things. And then they're like, okay, well, we signed the papers, and an hour later we were being offered a placement.
Wow.
So my wife dropped everything, went to the hospital. This baby was 2 days old, and brought her home. Was the sweetest little girl. She loved music. I would listen to, there's a musical called Vivo. And it's a love story, actually. Have you heard of Lin-Manuel Miranda?
The name sounds familiar.
He's a composer. He's the guy who wrote Hamilton.
Okay.
And he helped with Moana. He wrote Vivo. He wrote Tick, Tick, Boom, In the Heights. I mean, there's musical after musical after musical. He's written a bunch of them. And Encanto, that one. He wrote that one.
Oh, wow.
So he wrote the music for Vivo, and I would play it. It was like a little cartoon movie, and it would sing the songs, and she would bop all around, and it was so fun. Just,
it's so precious.
Yeah. Well, we had her for 4 months, and then the county decided to take her and didn't give a whole lot of explanation. And we're like, whoa. We're not supposed to put bad stuff in their suitcase, because the suitcase represents their mind and their trauma and their experiences. So it didn't make sense to us. I thought we weren't supposed to do that. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. What are you doing?
And so since then, we no longer work with that county. But we ended up closing as a result of that, because it was just devastating. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know how to explain this to anyone who's never fostered before, but everyone who is fostered knows exactly what I'm saying. And it feels like this child who's no longer in your home has died, even though you know that they are placed in another home.
Right.
And they're still very much alive, but you now have no access to them. But you cared for them every single day and loved them and took care of them, made sure they were okay for all these months. And then
Yeah.
bam,
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
it's
Heartbreaking.
gone. And I had been up with her the night before, got up with her that morning, went into work. I had like 4 or 5 sessions in a row. And I get out of my last session and I look, and my wife blew my phone up.
Oh my God,
And
right.
I'm in counseling. I can't talk. I don't look
Yeah.
at my phone. Like, I don't know anything's going on. And she was just hysterical, beside herself. They took her while I was at work. I never even got to say goodbye.
Oh my God.
So it was really hard. So we did some of our own work. We had to do our own grieving, and we put together a photo album as a way to kind of transition that. And we just took a break. So we've
Yeah.
just reopened,
Okay.
and we have been offered 4 times now placements, but they're not a good fit. So we've
Right. Right.
declined them, and we're like, look,
Right.
we're going to take the ones that are good fits because we're
Yeah.
serious about this. We're not going to
Mm-hmm.
yo-yo this.
Yes.
When we
Yeah.
take a child, we're taking them like
Yeah.
forever, as long
Yeah.
as they're allowed. Because we're open to the idea of fostering, and then if parental rights are terminated, to
Adopt.
adopt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so that's what we're doing. We're expecting in the next few months we'll get a placement.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Just as an adoptee and as a foster bounce around her, I say thank you
Yeah,
to you and your wife and your family
yeah,
for opening up your homes and your hearts to, people in need.
yeah. And I was very particular. I'm like, look, I don't want to take my work home. And we kind of did that when we were house parents because we lived there.
Right.
We were in it, so there wasn't any getting away from it. Um, Not exactly, but so with this, it was like, okay, I'll take kids. That's why we were like, okay, we want a real young infant because then the likelihood that they've had exposure to trauma is reduced because they're days old, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Although the placement we got, there was trauma, which is why we were getting that placement.
Right.
I can't talk about any of that, but it was a heartbreaking story. And I think our heart broke for the bio mom as well, who also grew up in the foster care system and was also walking around with her own trauma. But
Cycles tend to repeat until someone stops them.
right. So all of that's going around in my brain, but I found the way in the midst of all of that to write my story. And I wrote the first book, and then I realized this isn't the end of the story. There's more.
Right.
And I started book 2, but with the state of our world, this past decade has been especially difficult to have any bandwidth, have any resources to pull from to create. And writing a book, it requires creativity. I don't have the creative energy to do it. So I'm about a third into the second book and stuck until
Okay, I hear you.
about 45 days from now.
Then you'll be unstuck a bit.
Hopefully, depending on the results of that, I'll
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
unstuck.
Awesome.
Just
That's
like
awesome.
magically.
And your book is called The Packing House, correct?
Yeah. So here's the packing house. And I love it. It was actually published before, and that publisher went out of business. And then I was
Oh,
just
okay.
so devastated
Yeah.
because it was out for like 5 months, and then it went out of print, and I was like,
Oh my
really?
God. You're like,
I worked so
seriously?
hard on this, and you're gonna just take it out of print? So then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, it's dead. It's never gonna come back. There's no way. But this publisher is both in the US and the UK. So
Oh, okay.
it isn't just published in the US, it's also published in the UK.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's how they worked it
So,
around. They still ended up with first rights because it's published in both countries.
right.
Yeah. And I can't believe this, but I have a 5-star review from a New York Times bestselling author right below my name.
What? That's awesome.
And on the back cover, a different author, also a New York Times bestseller, wrote another 5-star review.
What? That's amazing.
I
That's awesome.
I have no idea how I pulled that off, but you know,
Because you're raw and honest, and when you're honest and people can tell, like what's got truth to a story and if
mhm,
it's got a background as to what's just a complete tale, so to speak.
right,
And because, it does deal with that subject, I think the people who are going to read it have been affected in some manner by that
mhm,
subject. So, as you said, like we have the biggest ripple effect on the world that we don't even know. So, published in 2 different countries, like, and then that's going to reach, Ireland because someone's going to bring a copy to their friend in Scotland, and like
mhm,
it's going to make its way around. And I think that's awesome because the more that people that are in the dark can read examples of people who've come out of hell
mhm,
to, write a book, or just even to come out of hell and still survive. Right?
right,
That's enough. You did it. You
mhm,
survived. And it's, such a drain that all these people caused us so much trauma, and we are stuck with having to, rip your rib cage apart 57,000 times. But it's the
mhm,
work you have to do to heal. And once you heal, it's almost like, oh, I guess for me, there was a little bit of gift that came out of it. It wasn't just all horror. I would not be
mhm,
as empathetic as I am if I had not been through what I've been through.
right. Yeah,
Right? So,
we do get gifts, and yeah, it's been amazing this whole journey. And writing the book was very cathartic. And then even the revision process, I spent 5 years revising it, getting it published the first time, and then it got trunked because it went out of business, and then nobody could buy the book. It was done. The first run it sold about 100 copies, um, and this second run is just a chance at new life. So I'm very grateful. I'm actually working to try to get a audiobook version,
oh, that's awesome.
and trying to get it in front of some people to see if it can go elsewhere. Would not mind a limited series or movie or whatever. Um, and hopefully in the month and a half I'll get going on the middle part and end part for book 2. Um, and part of the work of that is I'm writing 10 novellas.
Okay.
So one of the rules of writing is you up the stakes in the second book. And I've always planned this as a duology. So the packing house is sending everyone packing. It's like the concept of the Shakespearean to send someone packing. But also in my life, I've packed a lot. Before I was 18, I'd moved 50 times. And we were constantly throwing everything in the back of a hatchback and moving. Like imagine that you fit everything you can fit in the back of a hatchback, and
Yeah.
that's all you get, and
Yeah.
the rest just gets left behind. I got really good at that. So
Yeah, I bet you pack well for trips now.
I do. Like 5 minutes. Done. Got it. Let's go. And so book 2 is called Unpacking. the past. So the
Oh,
first book
nice.
is The Packing House. The second book is Unpacking the Past. So it's the idea of we got to dig in all the boxes. We got to get
Right.
down to like how many of us have moved and there's still boxes that we've never unpacked. And then we
Dude,
move
I just
ahead.
moved and I found like this shit from like 7 years ago that I haven't seen. I thought I already threw it out. And I was like, hey, wait. Oh, look. Weird. I
Me
just
too.
carried the box from house to house to house.
Right. So it's like a metaphor of we have to do the unpacking work. We have to heal from our trauma. We have to get down to the bottom of all the boxes and we got to face it.
Yeah.
But in book one, there's, I think, 3 named victims. In book 2, there's 10. And by the end of book 1, you know who the abuser is.
Okay.
And in book 2, it starts minutes after the end of book 1. I do
Oh,
apologize.
okay.
Book 1 ends on
Yeah.
a cliffhanger. Everyone hates me because they're like, we're all hanging on the cliff, Don. You're
Where's
a
book
jerk.
two?
You know, how dare you? I'm like, it's fine. It just picks up
You'll
right
get an
after
answer,
that.
just wait.
It goes right on from there. Like, it's okay. But in book 2, the abuser flips it, and the abuser accuses the victim of being the abuser. Because isn't
Yeah.
that, how it always is?
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons why, and I'm going to try to tiptoe around this real carefully. One of the reasons why I don't have energy and I'm consumed at night with online advocacy, I'll say, is because a certain person who's involved publicly for the next 45 days and, let's say, applying for a job reminds me of my abuser.
Oh, God.
So for me, it feels very personal. Like
Right.
every other minute I'm looking at stuff and it's like it pulls me right back into the trauma.
Right.
And I've done my work. Like I really dug around in the bag of pain and did my work. So how there's still stuff.
Yeah, I know, right? You're like, I am as empty as can be.
But still, it's like poke, 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 poke. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
trust anything.
Yeah.
There's going to be a cheat way. No, I'm
Yeah.
not. Like, I need to see hand on the Bible and job accepted and
Yeah.
other person goes away and
Yeah.
hopefully to jail um,
Yeah.
forever uh,
Yes.
till I know that I'm okay and safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear
But
you.
so the second book involves going to court and taking the abuser
Okay.
to court. And part of my story that I didn't get to tell yet is how that was botched. But
Okay.
I kept all of my receipts. And so I'm going to write them in my book. And those
Oh,
people who
awesome.
bungled it, you should have done better for me.
Yeah.
Because I was just
Absolutely.
a little 6-year-old boy. And
Yeah.
you didn't
People need to
protect
be
me.
held accountable, man.
Ugh. The judge, like the social workers, like the people who were supposed to be there. Nope.
Yeah. I
And
hear you.
it occurred right after I disclosed everything in judges' chambers. Like I told all the stuff to the judge. And then they bring him in into the room. Do you have a clue?
Oh
Like
my God.
this
Like,
poor 6-year-old kid just poured their guts out and is in a delicate state. And that's when you're
yeah.
going to bring in the abuser and see if he can handle being in the same room as him.
No, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. Fired and fired and fired.
Right. Right. They had no idea. They hadn't had ideas like, oh, we don't even have to go into the same room. We can do closed circuit video cameras, and yes, they can face their abuser, and I don't have any problem with that because I lived through it. But don't
Yeah.
take my right away because you think that I can't handle it. No, it's because you bungled it.
Yes,
And you
exactly.
didn't make me
Exactly.
feel safe.
Yeah.
And I froze, and you didn't even recognize that body response in me or give me any help. You just let him say and cuss and scream, and they had him in chains,
Oh my
handcuffs and
God.
foot cuffs, and he had the chains, and he's rattling the chains and scaring the crud out of me,
Oh my God. That's
screaming
horrible.
and cussing at me, and they just let him. Like,
Jesus. Wow.
do you all work for him? Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what did he pay you to do? Like, what's happening? How is this happening? Where
And
are the rights of the child, you know?
yeah, and never mind the fact that, like, I don't know how to even speak up for myself, and they're protecting the right of the abuser more than the victim
Yeah,
and doing stuff like
absolutely.
that, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous. So it's in
That's
the
like the
book.
reason I said nothing too, because I'm like, no one's gonna believe me.
Hmm.
Right? Like my first suicide attempt when I was 8, I overdosed and they took me to the hospital, and then it's chalked up as childhood misadventure. Childhood misadventure? What does that even mean? Like, it's not a misadventure. There was no counseling, there was no anything. I
No
went home and then that was just that. It was never talked about again.
signs of trauma and abuse that need
Right?
to
Like,
be attended and
hello,
addressed
anybody?
carefully. Oh my gosh, that's so horrible.
Crazy. It is.
Yeah,
It's
they.
and the world is a better place for having people who have, like you and me, who have grown through our trauma and now are able to, open eyes for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I would say the world needs your voice and voices like mine.
Yeah.
All of us who have figured that out and found our way through and found a way to still be here. The world needs us to speak up.
Yes. Yeah.
So Jody, I hope you will write all of
I
it.
am. I'm working on something. I'm working on two things, but one's going to take priority just because I think the world needs some good, and I don't know, that article that I wrote, that's
Mm-hmm.
pinned, my pin, that's like, that was in 2016, dude, and I probably get, 5, 6, 7 messages a week
Mm-hmm.
still. It's got, the last I checked, like 3.5 million hits, and it's in languages, it's in schools in some countries. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
absurd to me. So I want to take the love, and I want to take all the identifying information out, and I'm going to basically just publish the letter and then publish the people's stories, like with nothing that can link back to them, because I literally, some of them are anonymous, so I can't go back and say, can I have your permission to go into? So everything that could possibly, and I may reword it a little bit, but there's like 5,000 messages in my inbox, and I think, the world needs to see some light right now. And if
Mm-hmm.
this type of book can, provide some light for someone, then, like, I'm not going to be rich as an author by any means. So, it's not
Mm-hmm.
about the money. I want to get it published because I want to get it, even if I have to self-publish, I just want it to be out there. I think it's a
Right.
good time because people are right. They need some inspiration. It's a dark world right now.
Mm-hmm. That's
So,
so needed. Yeah. And I thank you for just taking the courage to write that, because it's not an easy process. But I'm going to
yeah,
finish up my duology. I'm going to publish the third book, which will be an anthology of the 10 profile stories of each of the other victims, um,
right,
and put that together. And then I'll add like an update on the main character, Joel, and where he's
right. That's
at the
awesome.
end of that. So book one is the packing house. Book two will be unpacking the past. Book three is going to be called We Are More Than Artifacts.
Love it. Love it.
And then that has to do with the abuser collecting artifacts that represent, like symbols that represent
Yeah.
each victim. And they do that as like a token because it helps them get high off of it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So, and then my next project after that will be putting all the trauma skills together in a book. And my idea is that the two books and the anthology will act as sort of like a narrative that clients can borrow if they want and start doing their trauma work. And
Right.
then when they're ready to switch over to their own story, they can do that. But
Right.
then
Absolutely.
they can do some of the work without even having to disclose their own story. And it's going to be kind of a set that goes together for clinicians to, particularly those who don't have a trauma story,
Right.
to learn from a primary source. here's
Right. Absolutely.
here's
Yeah.
a story, and this is what's true for most trauma survivors, and then to
Mm-hmm.
go from there. That's the idea anyway.
Awesome. It all sounds awesome. I can't wait to get it up, for it to all be done and for you to get it all out there. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what our time limits are here. Do
Oh
we have
yeah,
time?
you got anything else to add, my dear?
I think we can kind of wrap up,
Okay,
actually.
awesome. Awesome. I totally appreciate, you sharing your story and coming on the podcast. It's always good to see you again and to hear your voice, and I'm glad we got to catch up a little bit. So thank you for your time. I appreciate
Same.
you.
Yeah,
And send me your links and stuff, and then it'll be a couple of weeks, and then we'll get the podcast out. I'll send you the link, and you can post it wherever you want.
absolutely. Well,
Awesome.
Jody,
Awesome.
thank you so much for giving me space to come today. It's always lovely to
Always.
catch up with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
that isn't ever going to change. So
No,
don't
no,
think
we'll
that
always
just
catch
because
up.
time goes by,
I
that
know. I know.
suddenly I'm going to sour on it. Nope,
No,
not
I
ever.
know. Absolutely. And we can do another podcast too, besides just catching up. So
Sure. Yeah.
awesome. I appreciate you, Don.
I appreciate you too, Jody.
Okay, have a great day.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast with your host, Jody Betty. If you enjoyed today's show, please give it a like and don't forget to smash that subscribe button. And if you appreciate the work I do, why not buy me a coffee? Details in the show notes. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Dorian Kent and produced by Jody Betty and Dorian Kent. This has been a Raw and Open production.